Baker neighborhood is recognized as a National Historic Place. In 1851, the Denny Party arrived on Alki Beach. They were the first white settlers in the area. The younger brother of the leader of the Denny Party was the first to build his house in Mount Baker. Mount Baker became a site for one of Seattle's sawmills, which was the greatest source of money back then. He eventually sold his house to the Hunter Tract Improvement Company, who hired the Olmsted brothers to design the Mount Baker area. By 1907, all the houses that were built in the Mount Baker area had been sold to new owners, and most of the houses still remain today. Starting at the time of its inception, Mount Baker had several racially restrictive covenants included in its deeds that kept African Americans, Asians, and other non-whites from owning property in Mount Baker. Because of this, Mount Baker remained a white neighborhood for most of its early existence. However, these covenants were only in effect until the late 1960s, and when they were gone, people of color started moving into the lower half of Mount Baker.
My name's Jeannie Rosen, and I've lived here since 1968. Well, when we moved in, it was there was a lot of racial tension in the world, in the neighborhood here.
Before the year of 1960, Mount Baker was inhabited by less than 5% of non-white people, and this number didn't rise until 1970 when the Open Housing Ordinance was passed, which ended housing discrimination based on race. With this combined with the financial recession that made real estate in the neighborhood cheaper, Mount Baker went to an almost all-white neighborhood to a 50-50 split.
We had rich diversity in that time. This was not an area that had been redlined, where the ethnic diversity was redlined out of existence. At that point in time, and we're talking the late 60s, we had approximately one-third African American, one-third Asian, and one-third Caucasian.
But even though Mount Baker is much more racially diverse than it used to be, you can still cross a single dividing street that separates the rich people from everyone else. And suddenly it becomes an economic problem. Most of them live on something called Governor's Row, which is closer to Lake Washington, where the houses cost an average of above $2 million. But as we approach 31st and 32nd, the prices drop.
It's because of the price of houses. There's a lot of people down there who can't afford to, and it's not a racial issue, it's just an economic.
Another notable part of Mount Baker's history is that the civil rights movement of Seattle started right here at Franklin High School. After two young African American students were suspended from Franklin High School in March of 1968 after an issue with a white student, Franklin's black students, combined with UW's black students, rose up and started Seattle's civil rights movement. The whole story is quite complicated, but in the end, they had their voices heard, and they spread the civil rights movement all across Seattle. As for the future of Mount Baker, people are looking to build a park around Mount Baker Light Rail Station. Looking around, one can clearly see that Mount Baker is a great community. Although it may have its issues, it has grown over the years and will continue growing.
I mean, it's really a community. It's close to things, yet it's not right in the, downtown. And there's the water, and there's the trees, and there's a sort of a non-urban feel about it.
Yeah.
And I really think the neighborhood, I think people who move here want to interact with the neighbors. I think that's, I don't know, I just think that's the culture here. And you just go out in the street and there's always somebody there, and people care about each other. When their puppies die, everybody gets upset about each other's lives. And I think it's unusual in this day and age that this neighborhood is still